Welcome to the Payment Summit that is the first day of the Istanbul Fintech Week 2020. The summit kicks off with a landmark session on payments innovation by featuring two distinguished female experts. The title of the panel is Payment Innovation Yesterday and Tomorrow. Let's welcome Faisal Khan from Faisal Khan and Company as the moderator, and Liliana Fratini Passi from CBI and Kristy Duncan from Women in Payments.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Istanbul Fintech Week. My name is Faisal Khan. I am your host for this session. This is Payments, Innovation and Payments Yesterday and Tomorrow. I have with me Mrs. Liliana Fratini Passi as the CEO of CBI and Vice Chair of UNCFAC. UNCFAC is United Nations Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business, and she is dialing in from Rome, Italy. And I also have Ms. Kristy Duncan, founder and CEO of Women in Payments, and she is dialing in from Toronto, Canada. Ladies, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we'd like to get started perhaps on, get your perspective and basically get a collective bearings, right? I'd like to take, both of you to start. Where are we now currently as far as payments are concerned? Kristy, would you like to take the lead on that?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks very much, Faisal. I'm so excited to be here. So where are we now? I think we're at this really exciting inflection point. We've got, I'm just going to talk about three key things. We've got, in many markets, the move to open banking, open data, where we're opening up the market to new players, bringing competition and innovation to the market and new customer experiences, which is going to be awesome. We have also concurrently with that an evolving payments infrastructure. We were moving to real-time payments in many markets. We're building out the interoperability between markets, between payment systems. We've got more data available as we migrate to ISO 20022 standards, which brings payment data together to travel through the payment system and giving customers way more information. And then together with that, we've got the regulators in most jurisdictions moving to ensure four key pillars of trust. We've got digital ID, of course, the secure payment system itself, a secure data management framework, and also the concept of privacy and consent. So, like what we got with GDPR in the EU. And so all of those pillars of trust are forming a great underpinning for the evolving infrastructure and the open banking data and the interoperability, all of that to come together to really move us forward to a whole new level of payments experience.
Thank you. Ms. Passi, what would you say where we are today?
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy and excited to witness the experience, the Italian experience performed over the years in CBI. First of all, let me briefly introduce CBI as a public limited consulting company that comprise more than 400 Italian shareholders, payment service providers, and in this long time of 20 years, CBI has been working as an ecosystem where promoting payment initiation services infrastructure to promote at national and international level, providing citizen enterprises and public administration with value-added services such as CBI as a corporate bank, CBI Globe, and CBIL. As per the international payments landscape, has undergone a massive change over the last years, in particular in the current pandemic that we are living in is likely to foster these trends and lead consumer to progressively abandoning cash in as affinity for digital payments growth. So in this peculiar framework, we are assisting at electronic payments as the new instruments preferred by customers. And we are seeing that the customers are now migrating away from cash for digital payments growth. And an interesting report from Capgemini World Payment Report in these last months has registered interesting figures, such as the 30% of consumers are using a big tech for payment services, and the 50% of consumers are already using a challenger bank for some payments. And furthermore, as of April 2020, more than roughly the 40% of consumers say that they discovered a new payment provider during the lockdown. So in this scenario, the internet banking and direct account transfers were and are still the preferred payment method throughout the global health crisis. So we are now registering not only in Italy, but all over Europe. This progressively consumers, of course, shifting from cash-based to electronic payments. And in Italy, we are also assisting the Italian government, which is working to delineate a digital payment strategy to fight tax evasion, unleash resources to promote a level playing field, and especially to enhance the resilience of economic infrastructures vis-a-vis future systemic shocks. So in this context, we are supporting the government in creating not only the infrastructure, but aside the financial institution to bring this new electronic payment system at the step of the consumers. So we are providing a remarkable contribution to the evolution of the open banking and the open finance in Italy through, in particular, the recently multi-banking platform CBI Glode, which is an open banking gateway. And so we are actively contributing in this new panorama.
Thank you for that. Kristy, let me ask you a question. There seems to be a very large push for this grand unification of banking and non-banking financial institutions, particularly things like PSBs and other MSBs. Whilst this is certainly happening in, let's say, mature economies like the United States, like the SEPA region and so forth, Canada also, how far do you think we are out from being able to have a grand unification where the developed and underdeveloped or emerging markets are able to connect with each other using a single API, where fintechs and institutions, be it banking or non-banking, are able to seamlessly connect with each other and have that API ready today? How far do you think we are from that?
Wow, that's a great question, Faisal. Gosh, where do you start? You're right. There are a very number of different markets that are at different stages of this journey towards that holy grail of the total oceans of data that are all interconnected via APIs. And I think we have still a long way to go, even in the more mature markets who are farther along in the journey, because we still need to some of the regulatory issues, some of the API standard issues that are still evolving. And we talk about, the German API standard and the EU. And I don't even think in some of the less developed markets that we have as much drive or ability for the regulators to help push that agenda forward. Because if you look at, for example, the Asian markets, they are quite fragmented. While it's a very large market, looking at Southeast Asia in particular, it has many smaller countries. So many people, but there are siloed across different regulatory regimes, different languages, different stages of the evolution. So until we get to that one holy grail of a universal API that works around the world in real time across all players, I think we're quite a ways away from that. Having said that, there's great opportunity there, and certainly the customers will benefit. And there's lots of initiatives by players to be these API aggregators in many of the markets. But we need to ensure that we've got that underlying foundation of security and trust to even allow or encourage the consumers to sign up for this, because in many markets you actually do have to sign up and say, yes, I agree and want to do this. So I think we're still a fair ways away from it. I say perhaps in the more mature markets we might be 5 years away, but there's still a lot of work to be done in some of the other markets to get to that holy grail. And I hate putting numbers on it because I you're guaranteed to be wrong, but that's kind of the way I see it.
Thank you. And Liliana, CBI is doing this thing in many ways. You have, I don't know, over 400 members in the EU that are trying to connect to you. What's your perspective on open banking and let's say a unified API or a super API just for the European region alone? I mean, that's something where you have success, right?
Well, thank you for your question. It's a good opportunity to underline some points. Well, first of all, it is valuable to highlight that the advanced technology are now enabling market players to obtain outline information about consumers. And this trend will put banks, fintechs, and big tech in the position to offer banking products, and so to compete against the incumbent, and especially help the unbanked people. And so far, APIs have shown to be the most efficient and secure way to communicate data customers among market players. And especially after the entry into force of the Payment Service Directive 2 in Europe, helping the single euro payment area, we are, of course, assisting that the APIs has been enabling the interconnection between banks and banks and non-banks financial institutions. We also call them third parties providers in their role of payment initiation service and account information service. In other words, we can say that, and we assist that data sharing principle originated by the EU directive has led now banks to share consumers' data with banking and unbanking financial institutions, thus boosting the level of innovation and competition of the EU payment markets. Nonetheless, according to some relevant survey conducted by the European Commission, the SEPA, the single euro payment area, is still present, still under a level of fragmentation, due first of all to the fact of the lack of a pan-European solution that are applicable across the continent to make payments besides the services offered by large technological companies such as big tech, as well as the fact that in the single euro payment area has not yet reached its full potential. For instance, we assist the fact that in some cases the SEPA credit transfer and the SEPA direct debit are refused by the receiving countries, different from the sending countries. So there is a breach, a clear breach of the SEPA regulation. So this level of fragmentation within one of the most advanced international payments market shows us the importance to keep working to ensure an enhanced level of effectiveness and interoperability of payments. And we with regard to these points, it will be of utmost importance to support the realization, the implementation, not only at Euro, but worldwide level of an open finance regulatory framework, which will be based firstly on the revision of the Payment Service Directive 2 scope. For instance, the new regulatory framework shall ensure reciprocity and an adequate level playing field between banks and non-banks financial institutions, especially with regards to the sharing customers' data. However, we can see that according to the market experience, regulation may not be sufficient to guarantee the interconnection and the interoperability between through API between banking and non-banking players, as they could leave room from zone. This is an aspect that we are seeing in Italy and all across Europe, because, for instance, in the case of the implementation of the Payment Service Directive 2, which provided market players with the goals to be reached by all the non-banks financial institutions, we are seeing that this kind of API standards are not sufficient. And to face this issue, the European Banking Authority published a series of opinions and some opinions to the financial community to help banks and third parties providers to implement the EU directive. But however, the EBA opinions are not mandatory, just a recommendation. So the NCA, the National Competent Authority, and for Italy, the Bank of Italy, is helping this implementation to lead a common interoperable area, and so to reach the interoperability of these communities. So as a CBI Globe, we are working, and we've been working over the years in creating this kind of ecosystem, thanks especially with the implementation of the CBI Globe, which is a multi-banking platform helping the community, banks and non-banks, to interconnect. And so CBI Globe has now, so far, the 80% of the domestic banking market to meet the requirements of the Payment Service Directive 2 to ensure the bank's compliance with the above mentioned directive. So it is really important to create an ecosystem, a collaborative ecosystem, both on standardization of the API, the identification of common use case, and the identification of the interoperability between platforms linking by APIs.
Thank you very much for that. So Kristy, a question for you. Since you've traveled a lot, you've seen a lot of the markets, you've been to the emerging markets, you've been to the developing markets. What do you think are the top 3 drivers in payments for the future? And not just from a developing markets point of view, but also from the emerging markets point of view. You know, the developed markets obviously have their challenges, but also from an emerging markets point of view, what are your top 3 promising drivers?
Wow, great question, Faisal. Thanks for that. Of course, open banking, open data, open APIs has really opened up the markets for the fintechs and the tech fins, as I like to call them, or the big techs, as others call them. And we're seeing some really interesting innovation there. In the Asian markets, for example, you've got Gojek and all of those other players that are really getting into the payments market in a big way. And I had dinner with the head of Alipay in Canada a few years ago, and I made the big mistake of talking about Alipay as a payments app. And she said, no, it's a super lifestyle app. So I think that whole tech ecosystem is starting to really open up the experience and the possibilities for payments, which is really, really exciting. A lot of that is based on my second driver, which I will mention, which I've earlier mentioned, is the trusted and secure framework that's being provided in many markets by the regulators, including digital ID, that the trusted and secure payment system 24/7, the privacy and consent issue laws, as well as the secure data management framework. COVID-19 as a third driver was one that we weren't planning for, but here we are with it now. It has really pushed the innovation curve. It is driving electronic banking, e-commerce, contactless payments. In many ways, it's also pushing down the use of cash, which in many ways is a good thing, but I think we have to be careful and not forget that there are people in many markets who still rely a lot on cash, and we can't leave them behind. So we need to continue to have good solutions for cash and those who aren't digitally included. And that's a bigger issue in some of the less developed markets where there is a big population of financially excluded people. And we need to really be mindful of how do we open up the payments market to make it more accessible to them. I'm going to add a fourth one. Sorry, I'm going to cheat here a little bit. And that is something we've not talked about today, and that is crypto and CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. We haven't seen them come to live in the market yet, but we're starting to see some pilots by some of the central banks, the Central Bank of Korea and the Riksbank in Sweden, and certainly the digital yuan in China are all in market in a very limited way for those central banks to learn about it and see how the markets might tolerate or use those new facilities. And I think that's going to be a very big game changer. It's not going to happen overnight. We won't see it in 2020 or 2021 on a wide scale, but in the next 5 years, I expect to see a number of crypto central bank digital currencies in market, and they're going to change banking again in a very big way, similar to how open banking has opened it up to more competition and innovation. And I think we're still too early in the game to see what that's going to look like in the longer term.
Thank you for that. Which, by the way, the Barbados government's central bank sand dollar went live with the CBDC. So they were the first ones in the world to actually take it live, not a pilot anymore. But anyways, coming to you, Ms. Passi, you have a perspective from the UN, which might be very unique to us. How does that come into play when we were to ask you, what are the top 3 drivers in payments for tomorrow? What are your top 3 choices?
Thank you again for the question. Well, the first driver I can affirm could be related to traditional banks that have been suffering the pressure caused by the entrance into the market of new players. And in particular, if we consider the fact that consumers tend to rely always more on large technology companies and fintechs for the provision of payment services, traditional financial institutions will have to work very hard to innovate their traditional business and offering value-added services, for instance, acquiring new market shares and enhancing their competitiveness vis-a-vis new players. A second trend is strictly linked to the use of advanced technologies for the provision of these financial services. Well, of course, financial services have undergone a massive transformation to the application of innovation technologies, including the API, the blockchain, the DLT, distributed ledger technologies, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as Internet of Things. So all together can be, all these new technologies can be combined mind in creating new, very useful value-added services to be offering to the customers. So through the use of the above mentioned technologies, the technological and new players are generating new cost-efficient business models, and that can provide the payment service users with innovative functionalities. In my experience, I'm seeing on the market the fact that, for instance, we can see services for payments, capital market and trading, crypto assets, crowdfunding, insurance lending, credit scoring. So a lot of new functionalities and services can be offered large in the offering of a traditional bank. And also it's worth to mention that technology are also enabling new payments methods. Internet banking and direct account transfers are the preferred payments methods throughout the global health crisis. And we have seen these interesting figures, of course, increasing over the last 6 months. So tap to pay and cards digital with the cards and digital wallets such as QR-based payments. So we are assisting an incredible change, a rapid change scenario in electronic payments. But last but not least, the financial services market will, of course, be characterized by an even more evident presence of non-financial actors, due, of course, in Europe for the effective of the payment service directive. So fintech and big tech companies, telecom and utilities, as well as the digital banks, have become relevant payments market players, and we are now assisting in a different way of collaboration between fintechs and banks. For instance, banks and fintechs are in the position to cooperate in order to provide customers with value-added services. And we are, for instance, assisting that banks in the position that will be in the position to turn themselves into a marketplace to enable fintechs to sell services to banks customers, avoiding facing heavy technological investment for the provision of new functionalities. On the other side, we are seeing fintechs that will find themselves in the position to access a large set of customers that would have been impossible otherwise and more unlikely to reach. So in this context, from a strategic point of view, banks might also decide to buy fintechs, invest or create incubators, business incubators, to promote a new kind of a partnership that has the potential to create advantages for all the markets. So this is what we are assisting almost in Europe.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to hear the perspective of two people across the continents, but as with everything else, we're out of time. I've always said this, whenever a conference ends or a session ends, we always say, it's an exciting time to be in that industry. But I really believe that this today is a very exciting time, not just because of the challenges, but more importantly, because of the access to those challenges. We have the ability, big or small, to be able to contribute, which we did not before. There was a barrier to entry. But thank you very much for your perspective, Ms. Passi. Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, till next time, this is Faisal Khan signing out. All the best for the Istanbul Fintech Week.